awesome show today. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock. And don't I sound jacked? Don't I sound excited? We got a smoke show right in studio. Uncle Jimmy is on the path to recovery. I have good news there. But I have even better news. We got a replacement for Uncle Jimmy while he's on injured reserve, just for a couple of days. Shamika Michelle in studio right here in Nashville. Don't I look happy? I mean, look how happy I look. Should I be this happy, Shamika?
You should be that happy.
Yeah, I am that happy. It's so much, normally when I look to the right, I prepare myself to be disappointed. It's just Uncle Jimmy over there. Now when I look to the right, I'm like, oh my God. Smoke Show in studio. The newest voice added to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm so glad you came to visit us from North Carolina. Glad to have you here for a couple of days. Everybody's going to be here this week. Delano's in town right now. He'll be here in studio with us tomorrow. The smartest man on the show. Later in the week, Steve Kim's going to be here, filling in for Uncle Jimmy. Leonidas Johnson's going to come down from Ohio to visit with us. So big week. Everybody's standing in the gap, filling in for Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy went through surgery on Saturday and is on the path to recovery. Right now, we've put him on injured reserve, maybe for the next 4 to 8 weeks. I wouldn't call him day to day. He's on injured reserve right now, but he is on the path to recovery. So we have that good news. And even better than that, I got fires to start today. We're gonna go to Jacksonville, Florida and visit with our good friend of the show, Dennis Evans. We're gonna talk about Jaguars head coach Urban Meyer, who's issued an apology. We're also gonna talk with Dennis about the new Sopranos movie, The Many Saints of Newark, came out on HBO Max. And then we're going to start by talking about Bill Belichick. But Shamika, I got a little special gift for you before we get rolling. Have you seen our intro we prepared for you?
No.
Yeah, we got a whole special, Delano type intro for Shamika Michelle. Could we play? It's only like 10 seconds, but let's show the intro for Shamika. Smoke Show. I don't know what
I love it.
Yeah, I'm not sure do you like the music? I'm not sure about the music. Play that again. I want zoom in on play it again. I like the music, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me see this. Ow! I think I like it better the second time. It makes me say, ow! All right, let me start this fire. What do you think? Did you have a take on the music?
It's a little bit more rock sounding than I would like, but
you want soul or hip hop?
Hip hop soul.
You want hip hop soul? Yeah. All right. we'll work on that. We'll work on that. Chris is a hip hop expert.
Okay.
And so I'm sure he'll be working on a beat as this show progresses today.
All right.
All right. Let me get to my fire starter on Bill Belichick. My takeaway from the historic Tom Brady-Bill Belichick clash Sunday night is rather unusual. We've created a culture so soft, so free of uncomfortable truth, that it's nearly impossible for anyone to do their job at a high level. We're all on eggshells, afraid of causing a moment's discomfort, worried we might say something that can be twisted for clicks and tricks, terrified we could lose access to someone important. Bill Belichick blew last night's football game. He needed to be called out on NBC's telecast. It didn't happen because our safe space culture frowns on mild critique. In the final minute of Tampa Bay's 1917 victory over the Patriots, Belichick continued his bad streak of poor decision-making. A streak that started the day he decided he'd rather move on from Tom Brady rather than acquiesce to Brady's small demands. Facing 4th and 3 with 59 seconds to play, Belichick sent Nick Folk onto the field to attempt a 56-yard field goal in the pouring rain and against the wind. The kick would have given New England the lead by a single point. Tampa Bay still had 2 timeouts and Tom Brady. Make or miss, it was a really dumb decision. There was too much time on the clock. A week ago, on Sunday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers drove the Green Bay Packers into field goal range in 37 seconds without any timeout. On Tampa's previous possession, Brady tossed 2 would-be long TD passes to receiver Antonio Brown. Brown lost the first one in the rain and the lights. He dropped the second, a perfect rainbow that descended from the heavens. But there was more. Patriots rookie quarterback Mac Jones earned the right to throw at least one more pass. He'd completed 31 of 40 passes on the night against a secondary that had to get Richard Sherman off the streets and put him in the starting lineup. They lost another starting defensive back midway through the game. What the hell was Belichick thinking? There was no indication that this moment was too big for Mac Jones. It was for Bill Belichick. He choked. Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, NBC's terrific broadcast team, never commented on the foolishness of Belichick's decision. I can't really blame them. Our culture overreacts to criticism. Had they second-guessed Belichick's obvious error from the broadcast booth, they would become the story, not Belichick. Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth blast Belichick. That would have been a headline. There would be endless debate about the appropriateness of criticizing the greatest coach in NFL history, a 6-time Super Bowl winner. Belichick could become even more aloof and dismissive. He could treat Michaels and Collinsworth the way he does the rest of the media, with disdain. Better to leave the discussion of Belichick's boneheaded strategy to Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. Easy to ignore football experts. I'm not criticizing Michaels, Collinsworth, Smith, or Bayless. I'm criticizing the culture created by social justice warriors. They've outlawed legitimate criticism. They've cultivated safe spaces for elites. Fair criticism is defined as hate or racism. Multi-millionaire football players wear helmets with slogans attached to the back that demand we stop hate and end racism. They're warm and fuzzy sentiments with no tangible finish line or path. What the sentiments create is hostility toward truth and fear of honest discussion. We've eliminated Howard Cosell from the broadcast booth and replaced him with cheerleaders. What's the point of knowing the game at a high level if you're prevented from discussing what you know? This is a culture problem. Not a football problem, not a Collinsworth and Al Michaels problem. They're bowing to the culture. Bill Belichick, like LeBron James and Greg Popovich, Barack Obama, Beyonce, and the highest of them all, St. George Floyd, Belichick has ascended to heights not achieved by Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, and Michael Jordan in his playing prime. Belichick is an icon above serious questioning. He's football Jesus. It's an honor to share the planet with Belichick. Again, I'm criticizing the culture, not Belichick. Questioning Belichick's decision-making does not diminish Belichick. He's proven his greatness. His status as football's greatest coach isn't up for debate. What can and should be questioned is whether he's lost a coaching step or two. No one sits on the throne forever. Belichick miscalculated on Brady. Not as bad as the Boston Red Sox Babe Ruth miscalculation, but Belichick clearly gave up on his star pupil 3 years too soon. And guess what? Belichick probably pushed Brady aside out of fear of the woke mob. Belichick was trapped by his history of letting his stars, Ty Law, Richard Seymour, Lawyer Malloy, leave a year too early rather than a year too late. Had Belichick made an exception for Brady, the woke sports media would have accused the legendary coach of providing Brady white privilege. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Does it sound crazier than statues of George Floyd? Crazier than Maria Taylor insinuating Drew Brees is racist because he defended the flag and the national anthem? Crazier than arguing that men can have babies? The American media eat crazy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bedtime snacks. Our country is crazy because we've let social media apps outlaw any truth that causes the slightest discomfort. We've gone from no pain, no gain to whatever annoys destroys. Here's the real irony. The softening of America is why Belichick is in decline, not the absence of Brady. You can't be Bill Belichick in a soft culture. And this culture is way too soft. Ow! You feel that heat, Shamika?
I do. It's feeling nice and warm, too.
They do have the studio a little warmer here than I like to keep it, but I heard that was at your request. Let's roll out to Jacksonville, Florida, and bring in a friend of the show, longtime sportscaster Dennis Evans, who lives in Jacksonville, Florida now. Dennis?
Yes.
What do you think of my take that Bill Belichick perhaps has outlived his usefulness because modern culture has made his style of aloof, dismissive, hardcore coaching and truthful coaching hard to do? We'll start there. Do you think the culture shift is hurting Bill Belichick?
Yes and no, but I also say if you're scared, go home. I don't think Bill Belichick is scared. I think if he's reached the point in his career where he even cares at all about what other people are thinking, then shame on Bill Belichick, because there is no room at all in coaching for anybody who is scared. You have to make your decisions. You have to stand behind your decisions. Where I get a little bit iffy on it is I think to myself, this is the same guy who cut Cam Newton. You know, I wonder, was he worried when he cut Cam Newton about what the social media, about what all the social justice warriors were going to say about that? And I don't think he did. I think he just cut Cam Newton and went on about his business. I think it was a horrible coaching decision last night, but I wouldn't say that he's someone. I would think if anyone, Bill Belichick is almost bulletproof. He's reached a point in his life where his credentials speak for themselves. The man has done everything that you can do as a coach, and I think he's bulletproof. I think he is above and beyond criticism in the sense that he doesn't care what other people say. But I will say this, most people do. That's the problem that we have. I think so many coaches coach out of fear. So many decisions that are made in our society, whether it's a leadership decision, whether it's personal decisions, people are afraid what's going to be the reaction. It took me back when we first started talking about this and you brought up Bill Belichick and, the possibility that he was scared. It reminded me of a job I took in Las Vegas. When I walked in, I'm coming into Las Vegas to work in a sports department with a guy who's probably about 15 years older than me, a white guy. And, we're coming from two completely different worlds. Something happened on the television and it was funny. It involved a black guy. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to laugh because I think it's funny. And he looked at me almost as if he needed permission to be able to laugh and make the comments that he wanted to make. And from that moment on, we sat down and we said, you know what, here's the deal. This is going to be the opposite of the safe space. In this environment, say what you want to say. Speak your mind. Let it be truth, and we're going to be good with it. And we have the best relationship. We have the best communication. But as a society, we've reached the point to where people are so afraid to speak their minds, especially on television, because you say what you say on television, then the next day you have to deal with the fallout. You have to deal with the Twitter mobs. You have to deal with all of those things, not even the next day, the moment after you say it. And I think, Bill Belichick's not a guy, to me at least, that I think would be worried about that. But I think we as a society have definitely reached the place where everybody's afraid of everything.
All right, so Dennis, you're a longtime broadcaster. Let's take Bill Belichick out of the discussion. I do think broadcasters are measuring every word like it's a life or death situation. I'm a huge Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth fan. I'm watching this game last night. I'm looking at this decision to send this kicker out there, and they don't go at this decision in any substantive way. And I think it was out of fear of and again, justifiable that if they did criticize Belichick, it would be distorted by social media, by the rest of the media. They would become the story. And so instead of discussing something that was very fascinating in this game, like Bill Belichick, this quarterback done completed 19 straight passes, 31 of 40, and you're going to send a kicker out there and leave this kind of time for Tom Brady? None of this was talked about and discussed. And I know Al Michaels, I know Chris Collinsworth. These are great broadcasters, but in this culture, I think it's hard to be a broadcaster and be great.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree. I felt like there was a moment when Chris Collinsworth wanted to. There was almost, I don't know if you remember, but there was like a little bit of a hesitation that he had in his voice, and he kind of stumbled a little bit and said, I don't know. And he felt like, it felt to me at least, like he wanted to make a comment saying, I wouldn't do it in this situation. But when you get those larger than life figures, when you get the guys like the Bill Belichicks, when you get the, coach down at Nick Saban in Alabama, when you get guys like that, a lot of media people are afraid to criticize them because they think to themselves, hey, the next time I come into the building, I have to, not only just the public reaction, but what's going to be his reaction, because he's going to hear about it. He's going to see it. And I think before, comments that people made in the media sometimes were there. You said it during the game and it was done. Now every clip is recorded. There's somebody recording it. Somebody's going to play it back for the coach. Somebody's going to put it on Twitter a few minutes after, you make the comment. So I think there's the fear of the reaction from the public, but I think you also have a lot of broadcasters now that don't want to deal with the reaction of the coach because it's almost become kind of a buddy, pal environment between broadcasters and sports figures. And I think a lot of guys don't want to upset that apple cart, especially not the play-by-play guys. You have people who that's their lane. All they do is go after people. But I think you have a lot of these play-by-play guys and journalists who don't want to go after big figures and have to deal with the fallout of that.
Dennis, you obviously were in Kansas City at the beginning of my career in Kansas City. And I really came into that role as a columnist in a major city thinking it was my job, and not out of some perverse ego or just out of ill intent, but actually I wanted the subjects to be uncomfortable around me. When I showed up, I wanted to be, oh man, Whitlock's here. Let me measure my words. Let me be careful, because I just felt like a journalist's job or a media person's job, take even journalists out of it. Right. You got to be comfortable in places where everybody else is uncomfortable around you. And that has been my career for damn near 30 years. It's like everybody, oh man, Whitlock's here, and I don't care if you smile or any of that when you see me. We're not here to be buddy. And I got my friends. I'll be friends with Dennis Evans. I'll be friends with my boys from college. I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to do a job, and that ethos and that mentality is gone. Shamika, I'm gonna try to bring you into this conversation because one of the analogies that came to my mind just listening to Dennis talk is take Beyonce and the Beehive. The Beehive is this social media mob that if anybody says anything about Beyonce, they coming for your throat. They're gonna call you every name in the book. And again, this is what I'm talking about when I say social media has illegalized honest discussion and provides this huge shield of protection for elite celebrities. And we've put from LeBron James, he's got a Beehive, to Beyonce, to Bill Belichick, to Cam Newton. Tony Dungy had some very mild criticism of Cam Dungy last week, and the next thing I saw over social media is all these bots or paid people coming after Tony Dungy and me as if Tony has said something crazy, but people can't see, and the reason why I keep just going back and talking about it is because these social media apps that are supposed to democratize and put everybody on equal footing, and they're supposed to give the little guy, the voiceless, a voice. That's not what they do. They actually protect the elite, and you damn sure better make sure, don't you say a word about Beyonce, or your Twitter feed is gonna get spammed and smeared, and you're gonna be called every name in the book. I look at this whole culture, this idolatrous culture, minister, we got an idolatrous culture that protects elites.
Right, we do. And I'm so glad you steered it from sports, because when it comes to sports, I'm the one that's gonna bring you a cold beer and refill the potato chips. But I do think that you can't say anything wrong about anybody. Just last week, you said something about Cam Newton, and I responded on Twitter and said, ever since he started dressing like Aunt Pearl, I was over him. And people were upset, said, this is what's wrong with black women. You know, you focus on the wrong thing. Well, I don't like a man dressing like a woman. So it would seem as if I could be able to say that, and people would say, well, yeah, you know, he did start dressing like someone's old aunt. And I'm not talking about his game, but I don't like men dressing like women. Why is that so hard for me to say without somebody coming and being upset about it? And so I do think that we have sissified society, because you can't say anything about anybody. Instagram took a post down from me a few days ago for harassment and bullying. I put up a picture that said, this is what most people think a Chinese prostitute looks like. And it was a female, and then it said, but this is what it actually looks like. And it was a picture of LeBron James. And so
that's why you're here.
And they took it down for harassment and bullying. And I'm thinking, how can I, little old me, actually bully LeBron James? Like, so it's like he's above criticism, and there are certain people that you just can't criticize. And I was upset about that. I thought Instagram was being real wusses.
I did not know that story. That's fascinating. It doesn't surprise me, because and literally it's like, if you're not in that protected space, if you're the little guy, you could say that about Corey or Chris, right? And Instagram could care less.
Right.
But because you're LeBron James and you have so many million followers on Instagram and on Twitter and so they're concerned, and we got to make sure that nothing ever gets said that makes LeBron feel uncomfortable,
right,
or that there's any sort of criticism. And again, people say all kinds of crazy things about me, and it rolls off my back. I see they're Twitter cowboys. They're not real people. And Dennis, I'll be honest, the criticism and the heat that I take actually makes me a better performer. Without the heat, I would go soft. And we've turned down the heat in America. No wonder America is going soft. It's like the only public figure, I was going to say Trump's the only one, but anybody that supports Trump, you can say whatever you want about them too. But the rest of America, we have to treat with kid gloves. And I just think it makes our society and culture soft. And I think eventually that's going to catch up to Bill. But when all these guys, and see what Tom Brady did for Belichick to me was because Brady allowed Belichick to coach him so hard, it made it that all the other players on the roster had to deal with it too. I just think the further he gets away from Brady and having that public whipping boy in front of the team, I just think his job gets harder and harder.
I agree. You know what it brought to mind? I don't know if you followed the story, Jason, where the basketball coach, the women's basketball coach at the University of Florida was fired. His contract was terminated because he was considered to be abusive towards the players, the things that, he was saying to the players. And so I was interested in the story. So I started listening to what the players were saying that the coach did. And maybe some of it went, beyond that, but it made me think to myself, every coach that I've ever had my entire life would be fired if that's what harassment was, if that's what being mean to somebody was. Then every coach I've ever had. I heard players saying in the interviews, we had people that would cry in practice. He would tell us, you're not a Division I athlete. You shouldn't even belong here. I should take your scholarship. That is every day, or at least it was. That was every day at football practice. I can remember hearing coaches talk about people's mothers, people, just the things that a coach could say back then to you that you just knew was a coach coaching you up, trying to get you motivated, and that's what they did. Those same things now, you're fired. You are done. You are out of a job. And I'm sure maybe there were other things he did, but it made me think to myself, we have reached the point as I was listening to these players talk about, just basic, simple things. People were leaving practice crying. And I just thought, I cannot imagine with the things that were said to us as players. Can you imagine walking off of the field because the coach said something to you that hurt your feelings? That just wasn't even an option. You brought this up, so I have to touch on this, because if people don't know, talk about not worrying about what people say. I remember when you came to Kansas City, I was there in 1990, end of 94, 95. And I just remember it was almost like Omar was coming through, because when you came into the press room, the whole atmosphere changed. It was like, uh-oh, here comes that dude. He's going to ask crazy questions. But what I found was you became the shield, because you started asking tough questions. You changed the whole environment so people could stand behind you and say things that weren't as tough as what you were saying. And it felt like they were starting to get a little bit braver. It spawned, the whole sports talk show, arena in Kansas City, because people started looking at and saying, this is what people like. And the public liked it. Back then, people wanted you asking those questions. And it sparked controversy. Almost started the Andre Rison fight in the locker room. I thought we were going to have to get into it with him up in New York. I will never forget standing in that locker room, and he came over and he was yelling, "You made my mama cry, Jason." And the whole team kind of came around, and I was like, this is my boy. This is one of those moments where it's going to be written in stone. I stood next to you, but I really thought there was going to be a fight in the locker room up there in New York after that game.
Yeah, Andre Rison at a party one time. Derek Thomas had a party, and Andre Rison told me he was going to kill me, and he said it like he meant it. But, it's funny. Later in life, we became very friendly towards each other, and he grew up, I grew up. But I want to circle this back to both of you all are parents. And it's like my coaches never talk crazier to me than what my parents had talked crazy to me.
Right.
I mean, my mother is famous, even now at 82, on a cane. I brought you into this world, and I'll take you out of this world. And just the stuff, my father's passed now, but he always stayed critical, and it was a sign of love. And it's like, I think because that kind of parental love is absent in so many kids, that when they hear tough love from a coach, man, it feels like they just got shot with a gun rather than just getting a love tap, a pat on the butt and saying, get out there and get them. You can do better than that. I just, the breakdown of family, the breakdown of parenting is at the heart of all of this.
For sure. For sure. And I was going to say, like, when it comes to my children, I have 3 daughters. So I can remember the baby girl crying because her sisters were teasing her. And I said, you're not going to cry. You're going to be able to come back with something harder. Like, you're not going to sit here and be a little punk. I need you to be able to hold your own. And I can remember a teacher calling me one day, and she said, I have to tell you about something that happened in class. And I'm thinking, maybe my daughter got hurt. And so she goes, this little boy, he told her that she looks like his left nut. And and I said, well, did he hit her? And the teacher said, no, I just wanted you to know. I said, well, she can hold her own, because I knew I had trained her at home and dealing with her sisters. She knew she couldn't cry over that. So I'm pretty sure she said something back to him and hurt his feelings even more. And she goes, so you're not angry? No, I don't know if she wanted me to have a scene or, want to talk to his parents. No, my daughter can hold her own, and whatever he said to her, I'm sure she said something right back.
Yeah, that's from the old sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. That used to be the mentality. Mm-hmm. We used to have the mentality, no pain, no gain. Now we just want to make life free of pain, and we're going to experience none of the gain. Dennis, I want to switch topics to Urban Meyer, news out of Jacksonville. Dennis, you live in Jacksonville, used to work for the Jaguars franchise. You covered Urban Meyer when he was at the University of Florida. Urban Meyer's in some more hot water. Let's first take a look at the video of Urban at a nightclub, I think this past weekend, or Thursday, Friday, at some point, Friday, Saturday. At some point this weekend, here's the video of Urban Meyer at a club with a young lady appearing to twerk, grind on Urban, a married man. You got that smile on your face, Shamika. Why are you laughing?
Are you
That's so
critiquing the
funny
dance
to me.
or?
No, I just seen people, talking about it, and a lot of people are upset, and I didn't see anything wrong with it.
You don't see?
I didn't see.
If you're Urban Meyer's wife, you don't see nothing wrong with that.
Well, because I saw his arm kind of in between him and the young lady, so whatever song was playing didn't turn into "You're making it hard for me." So I just didn't see anything wrong. Like, he was having a good time, and you know.
Right, that's one take on it. Urban Meyer appears to have a different take based off the press conference he had today, where he basically apologized. Let's take a look at what transpired at his press conference today.
Yeah, I just apologize to the team and staff and for being a distraction. It's stupid. And so I explained everything that happened and owned it, and just stupid. Should not have myself in that kind of position.
Urban, did you fly back with the team, or did you stay in?
No, I stayed to see the grandkids, and we all went to dinner that night at the restaurant. And then there's a big group next to our restaurant, and they wanted me to come over and take pictures, and I did. And they were trying to pull me out on the dance floor, screwing around, and I should have left.
How did the team react? I mean, they're probably pretty reactionary, or how did they take it, your apology?
Well, I've always been so defensive of them. I remember when Trevor told me he was going to go to Vegas for his bachelor party. I was just, my gosh, man, be careful and surround yourself, and because I've seen this happen, and I just, so the team, I spoke to a bunch of leaders one-on-one, spoke to all the players. They're good. They were focused on Tennessee, and I apologized again for being a distraction. And a coach should not be a distraction.
How about your family? Did you feel a need to apologize to your family?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, that's not me, and that's oh yeah, they were upset.
Have you talked to Shad Khan about it, and what was that conversation like?
I did talk to Shad, and very supportive, and Trent, I talked to him obviously at length. Right when I got that phone call that night, the next night.
I stayed to see the grandkids. I've heard a lot of excuses for hitting the club, but I stayed to see the grandkids is kind of a new one. Shamika, I'm gonna ask you just for a little clarification. You just heard from Urban Meyer. You still see nothing wrong with that video?
No, if anything, I see something wrong with his apology. And I want to know when men are going to be tired of being publicly castrated. It was just a short clip of him dancing, and you stayed behind, you went out to dinner or whatever, you had a good time. I think the issue is that it was on film or it was on camera and it made news. But I don't see anything wrong with the act. I guess that, people don't like to see that or feel like, that's something wrong. I understand that he has a wife, but he's married, he's not dead.
All right, we've heard Shamika's take that legalizes Dennis and I to say whatever the hell we want.
That kind of mindset.
Dennis, I'm going to defer to you. You're the expert.
You know what?
I'm going to defer to you, Dennis. You're the expert. Go ahead. You get us rolling here.
I'll say this. My mother had a saying, if you kept getting in trouble and every time I come home, I'd say, hey, Mom, I'm sorry. She'd say, you're right. You're sorry. Because after a while, if you're in an Urban Meyer situation, this is a person who everywhere he's gone, there's been some kind of issue. There's always some kind of problem. If you go back to when he was at, University of Florida, he, suddenly had issues with his health. And being down here in Jacksonville and covering the Gators and being around there during that time, it was really not a secret. Urban's a guy who kind of likes to live on the edge. He had one image in public and always had rumors circulating around him of, his behavior off the field. Some of that stuff's been verified and some of it, really hasn't. But it's not a surprise, I think, to a lot of people, especially to Florida fans and people who have been around that program, kind of know the things that he was into back then. And I think, people tend not to change. He left there, went to Ohio State, had the issues with the domestic abuse. He backed a coach, who was abusing his wife, and he knew about it, and he let the person stay on staff, had that problem, came here to Jacksonville, and we're 4 weeks into the season, and you already have this issue. So I'm a strong believer, and I don't listen to what you say. I watch what you do. And if you watch every place he's ever been, there's always been some kind of problem. Now, that night, the team lost to the Cincinnati Bengals the night before. He decided he wasn't going to come back with the team. He was going to stay. He does have grandkids that are in that area, so he stayed in that area. His wife that night, had gone out to eat with him, and then she went home and she was watching the grandkids while he was getting the semi-lap dance up in the bar. And my problem is, it's 2021. Everyone knows there are cell phones everywhere. If you are a public figure or if you're just somebody who has a really good job and you want to keep your job, you better know that wherever you are, somebody is always recording. Same way I told my daughter, any picture you take and send to somebody, you better know everybody's going to see it. So don't send it unless you want everybody to see it. It's 2021. You have to know better. And I'm sitting and watching him and thinking, you're saying you're sorry, but you're looking down the whole time. You're never looking up and making eye contact. I didn't feel like he was genuinely sorry. And I don't feel like he needs to be castrated. But at the same time, what he did was wrong. You're a married man. You are the public face of an NFL franchise, and you're out, and you don't have sense enough to say to this lady, hey, get up off of me. Not to mention the fact that, the NFL has some of the strictest rules when it comes to COVID, when it comes to testing. We haven't even gotten into the fact that he's out there at a bar with this girl right up in his face, but at the same time, I'm sure telling the players, be safe, make smart decisions. So it comes down to me, basically him saying, do as I say and not as I do. I think it's just a bad look for him all around. And I think right now down here in Jacksonville, if Urban Meyer wanted to move, he would not have to hire a moving company because people would gladly go to his house, carry the furniture out into the street and take it wherever he wants to go, because I think a lot of people have already grown tired of his act here in Jacksonville.
So let me say that I worked with Urban for a short time at Fox Sports, really liked Urban Meyer, believe in him as a coach. When he was involved in that Ohio State situation, had long discussions with his representatives when they were looking for people to defend him and that situation he had with his assistant coach and how he handled that. I think the guy's last name was Smith or whatever. And so I'm someone who tends to like Urban Meyer and have followed his entire career. He started out as Bowling Green's head coach, Mid-American Conference, where I played. He's had success wherever he's gone. I tend to like Urban Meyer. Shamika, I just got to disagree with you. One of the things that Urban talks about publicly is his Christian faith.
Okay.
And as someone who talks about their faith publicly, one of the main reasons I do it is to police my own behavior. Dennis knows this. Anybody in Kansas City knows this. No one loved a strip club more than I did. By wearing my faith publicly, keeps me out of strip clubs.
Okay.
Keeps me out of nightclubs, basically. Now, will I go to a bar and have dinner, drinks, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you'd be hard to find me any place other than bed after 10 p.m. And so I'm pretty boring, and wearing my faith gives me the freedom to be pretty boring. Now, I said boring. I did not say that I'm free of sin.
Right.
I'm a human being. I'm flawed. But there's like some white lines I have to stay between once you decide to wear your faith publicly, which he does and has. And so I just think this violates all the rules. If he's not smart enough, as Dennis just pointed out, 2021, cell phones everywhere. I got a little hot blonde in my lap, public, and I'm worth millions of dollars. Again, this is no different than Robert Kraft, who does not, as far as I know, wear his faith on his sleeve. But it's like, hey man, this is a billionaire at a massage parlor. This just doesn't add up. He should build a massage parlor in his home and never leave the house. I mean, a billionaire? I mean, if that's how you get down, there's no reason to be out at the local strip mall massage parlor. And so this looks so sloppy that part of me, Dennis, and I know we talked about this earlier, part of this looks intentional. This is like the cheating spouse who really wants to get caught and is leaving condoms and dirty panties laying around the house. And, I've been out of town for a month. What's this condom doing here? What's this? Whose panties are these? I mean, it's just, this looks like a man that wants to be caught and wants perhaps an out clause.
Wouldn't surprise me as a guaranteed contract. We were joking earlier, and I said it wouldn't surprise me if he had hired the girl and the photographer too, and if she was wearing, a T-shirt underneath that said USC, because everyone knows that right now, if that man could go back and take the USC job and leave Jacksonville, he would. At the time, the thought of coming to Jacksonville, this franchise, everything that, knowing that you're getting Trevor Lawrence, who's coming in here, all of that sounded great at the moment. Urban Meyer was not built to rebuild anywhere. He's never had to rebuild the way he's going to have to rebuild in Jacksonville. And going to USC would sound a lot better than sitting here and sticking this out. And so many people said, after they lost that first game, people were joking and the memes were out there and people were, showing Urban Meyer falling down, saying my chest hurts, doing the Fred Sanford, oh, I'm having the big one, and, all of that. So it wouldn't surprise. Something about it just doesn't seem right, because like you said, it's 2021. You have to know, unless you're out in public and you've had a few too many, which it looked to me like he had a few drinks. If you see later on down the line, the other pictures with him and the girls, he has a drink in his hand. He kind of has that, a half of one too many. And I think that may have, blurred his judgment just a little bit. But this is a guy who knows. His wife was online, and you have to tell me what you think about this, Shamika. His wife, people were commenting and saying that, he doesn't deserve his wife. He's, too much trouble. And she went online and liked the post. So that tells you right there. And he said in the press conference, his family was upset, and they have every right to be. He has drugged them kind of through the mud. He's had, things kind of circulating around his name. And it's just time. If you want to be the head coach, if you want to be a leader of men, if you want to be the face of this franchise, then straighten up, get this job, stick to it, and lead them. If not, then it is better if he just goes ahead and goes on about his business.
Shamika, ball's in your court.
Well, if he publicly professes that he's a Christian, then as a fruit inspector, I do think that it should line up. But that's why I don't let people pin stuff on me. They want to say, "Are you a Christian?" I say, "I'm naked." And you can refer to first or second Nacolonians to see if I'm living up to that. But if he says he's a Christian, then yes, you do have to carry yourself a certain way. And you have to be mindful that the camera could be on you at any time. But that's exactly why I won't let people pin stuff on me.
Well, let's take his faith out of it, because again, none of this disqualifies his faith. He's a hypocrite like all the rest of us. But let's take faith out of it. Let's go to Dennis's point. If you just want to be a leader and you want to stand in front of 53 other grown men, 15 people on your coaching staff, so that's 68 people plus the 53 players. And so basically you're leading 100 people because of the support staff and all that other stuff. And you want to tell them the right things to do and not be a hypocrite. And that's why his head's down. He looks so sheepish, because he knows he's undermined his ability to lead that football team. He knows, again, when he starts talking about head coach should never be a distraction. Football coaches talk with their players constantly. Don't do anything that puts us in a bad spot. I'm sure he sits there and tells them, as he said, Trevor Lawrence going out to Las Vegas. I'm sure all there's cell phones and cameras everywhere. Be careful, Trevor. But how can you say those things now when, well, coach, they got you on tape. You like the same thing I like. I know that girl. When I was at Ohio State, she danced like, because that wasn't Urban Meyer's probably 58, 60 years old. That young tender looked, 24, 25. That was some Bobby Brown tenderoni right there.
Well, what if he had said something and it was the wrong thing? Now I'm playing devil's advocate. Like, what if he didn't exactly know how to, shove her, or, could his helpers have come in and moved her away? Like, if I'm out and my best friend is there and someone's doing something crazy, she will step in, because she kind of knows that I may be uncomfortable, but I may not, handle it the right way. What if he just didn't know the best way to handle it, so he thought this would be over? And as I said, he had his arm there, so she wasn't really grinding on them.
I know this. Now, I'll just say this. Now, one thing I'm very qualified to talk about are lap dances. There's you can put your hand down there to block or to cop a field.
Okay.
There's two different reasons to put your hand down there. And I'll just say this, in terms of how to stop and prevent a lap dance, an unwanted lap dance, is really not that hard. Because again, you go to strip clubs and there will be people that will try to force a lap dance on you that, you're not my cup of tea, sweetheart. And it's not that hard to get them up off of it. Huh?
I never had to force a lap dance.
Well, so, Dennis, I think, Dennis, you have a little expertise in this area as well. Do you have any suggestions on how Urban could have stopped this potential lap dance from happening?
That's like a fight. If somebody's walking up on you, you don't even let them get close enough to take a swing at you. And if you're in an Urban situation, she had to be comfortably close enough to him. You can tell there are other people around him in that situation. So that girl didn't weave her way through people to get to Urban Meyer. She was clearly already standing close enough to him, probably facing him, to where all she had to do was turn around and drop it like it's hot. And if you see guys coming out of the back of a club, the one thing you'll notice is it's a lot of shirts untucked. So there's several reasons why his hand may have been there, and I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that he was trying to get her to move away from him. I think he just got caught up in the moment, wasn't thinking about it, it got good to him, and the next thing you know, he ended up having to go home and say, baby, I made a huge mistake. And I think that's the kind of mistake. My mother would say, you can do a lot of things, but don't make a woman look like a fool in public. You make your wife look like a fool in public, and she'll make you look like a fool in court. You will pay for it.
Dennis, you made a point to me earlier about, didn't his daughter, on the day she announced her commitment to college or whatever, didn't she leave him out?
She basically said, what his daughter said was, I really want to thank my mom. My mother did everything for me. She's always been here for me. She's taken me everywhere. Dad, I'd like to thank you, but you were never here for me, basically is what his daughter said on that day. I went back and read the quote. She said, she told him, you weren't there for me. So, he kept saying, and I think that's another thing where people don't really respect him, because he keeps saying, I need to spend more time with my family. So you leave Ohio State and you leave Florida, and each time you're supposed to be spending more time with your family. Well, anybody who knows, being a broadcaster and traveling, the kind of preparation you have to do to be away at those shows, you're gone, you're doing interviews all week long. You are not around your family anymore as a broadcaster than you were when you were a head coach. So if Urban Meyer's priority was family, then he wouldn't be coaching at all. Urban Meyer's doing what Urban Meyer wants to do, which is be a football coach and take care of himself. And the price you pay oftentimes, anybody could tell you, no matter what field you're in, whether you're a head football coach, whether you're a business professional, no matter what you're doing, the family typically pays the price. And as a head football coach, you are sacrificing your family because it's not really possible to be there and raise your kids. So there's some animosity. I think his daughters know who he is. And I will say this as a man who was flawed, somebody who was married and divorced. My daughter always could look at me and know, this is a true story. I was in Vegas and walking through a store one day, and I ran into a girl who worked at a club, and my son was with me on that day. And the girl said, you know what? We need to grab lunch sometime. And she handed me her business card. And I took the business card, and she walked away, and we walked about probably 5 feet. And my son could not have been more than 6 at the time. And he looked at me and he said, hey, Daddy, give me that card. And he took the card and he tore it up because he was not having it. Kids are not dumb. Kids know what their parents are doing. So trust me, his kids know exactly who he is.
So does his wife. And she's still there. So maybe she has decided to let him cheat in peace.
Possibility, but I think he's not going to lead in peace. What happens to him in his personal life is really none of our business. His ability to lead that Jacksonville football team, I think, has been compromised. As Dennis is saying, the fan base there already sick and tired of him. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the Sopranos movie, The Many Saints of Newark. But before we do that, I want to tell you about my friends over at ExpressVPN. A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that, private. What's changed? The internet. That's what. Everything you browsed, searched for, watched, or tweeted is out there. Now imagine all of that data being crawled through and collected by third parties into a permanent public record. Your record. Having your private life exposed for others to see was once something that only celebrities worried about. But in an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure, to keep my data private when I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN. And the best part is how easy ExpressVPN is to use. No matter what device you're on, phone, laptop, or smart TV, all you have to do is tap one button to get protected. So if, like me, you believe that your data is your business, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Visit expressvpn.com/fearless and get 3 months for free. That's expressvpn.com/fearless. Go to expressvpn.com, fearless, to learn more, support the people who are supporting me and the content that you love. Do that right now.
Maybe some of the things you do aren't God's favorite.
You lead by example. We'll make the right decision. This kid's got what it takes.
As far as your nephew goes,
I'm listening.
stay out of his life.
All right, welcome back. Man, there was nothing I was looking more forward to than the Sopranos related movie, The Many Saints of Newark. I'm not sure if I've seen a movie I was more disappointed with than The Many Saints of Newark. Wow, the Dickie Moltisanti story, I could have definitely lived without. That movie was straight trash, an embarrassment for HBO, an embarrassment for David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos. I don't understand how this movie, well, I do understand how this movie got made. I think that any movie, right, anything that comes out of Hollywood, movie, TV show, podcast, anything that comes out of Hollywood has to be laced with some sort of woke narrative, some kind of racial narrative. And they just jammed this new 2020 reality down the throats of a show that was created in the late 1990s, early 2000s, that wasn't remotely woke. And they gave it a 2020 update, and they just tried to cram too much into it. Freaking thing was awful. And I knew that it was funny. Yesterday, I reached out to Dennis, and I was like, dude, have you seen The Many Saints of Newark? Because we were both hardcore HBO people in the 1990s and 2000s between The Sopranos, The Corner, The Wire. 6 Feet Under was halfway decent, although I quit watching it. But they put out a lot of great shows, and I was very hopeful that this movie was going to take us back to the days before everything in Hollywood turned woke, but it did not happen. They ruined this movie. And so I called Dennis yesterday, and it was funny. I texted Dennis, and I tell you, have you seen The Many Saints of Newark? And he's like, yeah, I'm halfway through it right now. And I didn't have the guts then to tell you to stop, Dennis. It only gets worse, but I should have. Did you like The Many Saints of Newark?
Jason, that was embarrassing. That was, you hear people joke around and say, I wish I could get back like that 2 hours of my life. That was such an insult to the entire Sopranos franchise. And what pissed me off about it was David Chase has always been so protective of the Sopranos franchise. And, everyone said, why don't you, back before all the characters died, spoiler alert in case you haven't seen the series. But anyway, if, back when Tony and everybody was moving, they said, maybe you should turn this into a movie, or let's keep it going. So you mean to tell me you went through all the complications of this fade to black ending? Is Tony alive? Did Tony get killed? Ending of The Sopranos, to turn around and do this as a prequel? I mean, when I first heard about it, and it was James Gandolfini's son who actually played the character of young Tony in the movie, and I mean, it was just horrible. I couldn't find one thing about it that I liked, not one thing. And we both said the same thing. About 20 to 30 minutes into it, and in fact, for me, it was about 45 minutes in, I thought to myself, how long is this? because I've been watching for 45 minutes and I have no idea what this movie is about. Why are they focusing so much on Christopher's father? None of it made any sense to me whatsoever. And I mean, I have a hard time understanding how executives, the writers, the producers, how they sat down and did a screening of that and said, that's the winner. Nah, not at all. That was truly, I mean, my expression was, that was hot doo-doo on a plate. I mean, I was expecting Thanksgiving dinner and they served up hot doo-doo on a plate. That movie was horrible.
Dennis, I've watched The Sopranos TV show probably 4 times all the way through, start to finish, and watched individual episodes. And what I'm just beating my head about is like, Dickie Moltisanti, I know he was referenced during the show, but it wasn't like there were flashback scenes of Dickie Moltisanti throughout The Sopranos. And so to me, it was like, if you're gonna make a prequel to The Sopranos, make it about Tony's father, Johnny Boy.
Yes.
That was the person. Make it about Johnny Boy and Livia, his parents, and their influence on him and how they created him. To make it about Christopher's dad and Tony's play uncle, I'm just sorry. I know Dickie Moltisanti was referenced, but he was not some huge reference in the show, particularly in comparison to Tony's dad, Johnny Boy, and his mama. That's who created him. And they turned it into something about this uncle. And I mean, just, and Shamika, I know you didn't watch The Sopranos and you haven't seen this movie, but one of the most unbelievable scenes and moments in this movie was the lead character, Dickie Moltisanti, this gangster or whatever, his father, who was also a mobster, brings back a young wife from Italy, straight out of Italy, barely spoke English, and the son kills his father over this woman. Beats him and kills him. I don't care if I ruin the movie for y'all because the movie ruins itself. If you haven't seen it, I don't know, I'm gonna give out all kinds of spoilers. Disappear if you haven't seen it, or trust me, the movie's terrible. I can't ruin it. But kills the father and then takes his father's wife as his side piece, as his Gomorrah, as they say in the Italian deal. And so one of the climaxes of the movie is he finally gives her what she's been wanting, her own beauty salon. And this is all, here's some woman out of Italy who now is, you know, a full-blown feminist after a few months in America, and you know she's got to have her own business or she's not living up to whatever. He gives her the beauty salon, and her reaction is, and you tell me if you know any women that would be like this in the 1960s, she gets her own business from her boyfriend or whatever, and her reaction is, I must confess, I was sleeping with your number one enemy, a black man who killed a bunch of your compadres and friends and blah, blah. I must confess this to you. You've been so nice to me by giving you this business. I must tell you that I've been banging this black man on the side who you hate and who has killed your friends, but I have to get that off my conscience. Do you know a woman that would do that?
Absolutely not. She would take it to her grave.
I mean, and the next thing you know, he's drowning and killing. The movie was comically stupid. That was the dumbest scene to me, Dennis. Was there any scene that competed with that in terms of stupidity?
I think it was all a connection of stupid scenes strung together. The thing that bothered me the most was, if you watch The Sopranos, you know one of the biggest fights that happened between Uncle Junior and Tony was when they were sitting at the dinner table together and Uncle Junior said, you know, Tony never had the makings of a varsity athlete. Well, that was like a big, you know, thing between the two of them. And the fact, everybody who watched The Sopranos knows that. And so they had a scene where they were sitting at the dinner table, and I thought the guy but by the way, the guy who plays Uncle Junior is the same guy who plays Michael Prince in Billions. I thought he did a horrible job acting in that. I mean, he was not Uncle Junior. You needed Uncle Junior is such a distinctive character. You needed somebody really good. The guy who played Paulie and I forget the other guy's name. Silvio. Those two I could kind of get into. I couldn't get it all into the guy they had playing Uncle Junior, but they had a scene where he goes, when he said he doesn't have the makings of a varsity athlete, and it was just such a blatant aha, see, we tied it all together. And I thought, David Chase, that's not what you do. That's not the way you wrote The Sopranos. The Sopranos was just written, it was produced, everything about it I liked. And I sat and watched this and thought, this is completely the opposite. Everything I liked about The Sopranos, this movie is doing completely the opposite. It was just dumb. But when that woman, as soon as she said it, and you were like, Shamika said, she'd take it to her grave. Yeah, she took it to her grave about 30 seconds after she said it, because she opened up her mouth. And I thought, you really are going to tell this man on this day, at this moment, he killed his daddy. You think he won't kill you? You are out of your mind. It was just stupid. It was that was seriously a really bad movie. And if somebody makes the argument, if somebody watches that and thinks it's good, I wouldn't even know what to tell you.
Dennis, I will say this. If you watch it and haven't seen The Sopranos, I do think it's better. When you carry all the baggage and you know what The Sopranos was, what the tone of the show was, what it represented, The Sopranos was anti-PC. And that was part of what bothered me about this movie, because the whole forcing of this whole racial narrative is like, well, hold on, man, that's not what The Sopranos was about. There were some black characters and episodes in The Sopranos, but The Sopranos wasn't a show about racial conflict. It was a show about Italian family conflict. And here they come with a movie that's all about racial conflict, and the black character that plays the lead on the other side, I never could figure him out. Why should I care about him? What was he really about? What was other than he was just a guy that wanted to be a numbers runner and didn't want to pay off the mob, I guess. But none of that rang true to me. And I say that just because my grandfather on my mother's side was the numbers guy in Indianapolis at the Chrysler foundry in Indianapolis and throughout the south side of Indianapolis. And it just wasn't that hard. And again, maybe we're not on the far East Coast. Maybe Indianapolis not a mob-controlled city or whatever. But they making it like Frank Lucas had to get involved and all this other stuff. And I'm like, no, man, my family's got history in this. Black people and all, Malcolm X talked about it and wrote about it in his book, right, about working for black numbers runners in New York in the 30s and 40s. And so they made it seem like, oh, there was this whole big feud and war between black people and the mob in Newark. And look, maybe it was, and they just lived a different reality. But I couldn't